We began our series with the topic of loss and grief. Today we're going to be looking at reconnecting after disconnection. Let's jump straight in, Karen. When we speak of connection, what might be we referring to, and what does reconnection mean?
I wanted to start off with a story that happened while I was working recently during COVID time, and it's a story about disconnection of families. And it was when we suddenly, with an hour's notice, had to take in 30 patients from one of the nursing homes with COVID. My job, along with a couple of others, was to ring the families as their loved ones arrived and talk to them about how they were, what condition they were in, get a bit of their story, and just let them feel as though there was some sort of connection to them being here at the hospital. So it was an absolute privilege to be able to connect them, at least in some form, and let them know what was happening, but also to get their story, so that when the nurses were going into the rooms, what we did is we wrote a little story and we had it on the outside of the room so that they knew who they were going into and they could have some sort of personal connection. We also got the families to send in photos so that we could set them up around the room. We laminated them and put them around the room, and that way they could, the nurses could feel the story of the person, and talk to them about that photos. For us, that was a really privileged time of helping families get back in touch in the limited fashion that it was. So that journey, I think, was really around disconnection moving into connection. You asked me what connection was about, and I think that story sort of highlights it. It's about the things that we love. It is about relationships that we have with people, but connection it's broader than that. It's about where do we find meaning? What can be connection to the spiritual world, connection to nature, connection to the physical side of things, to our body, sport. It can be what is it that feeds us and nourishes us? And that's what we were seeking to find out when we were hearing the story of those patients. How could we connect to them as well as connect them with their families?
What are some of the key foundations for connection? And how might these have been disrupted or even severed over this experience of disconnection?
Well, I think the key foundations of connection are things like love and stability and trust and intimacy, respect, communication, being present. And during COVID, our relationships with each other were really turned upside down. We couldn't be present to each other in the same way. We had to communicate at a distance. We changed the way in which we related to each other, and our stability was really undermined. We had to find new ways to maintain connection. I had a caregiver at hospital, we call our staff caregivers, who was a new grandma, and this was her first grandchild, and she was so sad about not being able to experience that time, and all that meant, because she was asked to stay away, understandably, and we talked a lot about what she could do then, given that it was going to be for some time, and how she could make that time meaningful and find connection. And so we talked about her writing a story and writing a letter to the baby, so that later on down the track it was something she could read to them about this was her experience and what she'd hoped for.
Our foundations have been rocked and in some cases even destroyed. What conditions or attitudes might we need to establish for reconnection?
I think it's different for different people. You know, the experience of the pandemic has been quite different for different groups. They've had, you know, the people who were very isolated and at home alone and had nobody. They had the people who had to work from home and were juggling kids and that. And then you had people like me that were at work and it felt as though you never stopped. So I think different people will need to deal with that differently. I know for the people who, like me, who were really, really busy and it was like you're on an adrenaline rush and endurance test that whole time. Afterwards, you know, you need to have the opportunity to let yourself have some downtime to, if you can, and release that energy and that adrenaline before you know, to go gently with yourself before you can, I guess, feel as though you're able to step back out into the world a bit more. You don't always have the the opportunity to do that, but that's what would be best. And I guess even for those who were alone or who were home doing the juggle, it's that thing about going gently, taking time, you know. The messages that are coming from the community and from media is get out there, spend, you know, rush around. But really we probably need to go gently and realise that this is a bit of a twilight zone, you know, that we might feel a bit anxious getting out there.
This time provides an opportunity and possibly a challenge to reflect on what's most important. How might we go at looking at that and possibly at what even we need to let go of? So, you know, I think reconnection is about, it means making things whole again. So to do that, we need to have that opportunity to pare back to the essentials, you know, to take our time, what's important to us, what is fundamentally important to us in our relationships, and spend that time thinking about, okay, how do we want to connect? How do we want to spend our time wisely and meaningfully at this point? And think about just taking small steps in the way that we do it. Don't necessarily throw yourself straight in. Yeah. Mm. This season of Advent is a time of anticipation and preparation for the birth of Jesus and also for Jesus' second coming. How might this provide an opportunity for reconnection?
I have a favourite song that says, longing for light, we wake in darkness, longing for truth, we yearn for you. And I think that's what this pandemic time has been about. You know, we've been longing for the light, and that's what it is as we're heading towards Christmas. We're heading towards the light, and we need to remember to take that opportunity to revel in the wonder of that, revel in the fact that God chose to become human and in the form of a baby, and that was a pretty amazing thing. That even in the midst of what they were going through, which was still, you know, fear and wondering what was going to happen. You know, it was pretty difficult, the environment around them at that time, 2,000 years ago. But the people, you know, there was still the wonder and awe of it at that moment, and that's, I think, what we should take in terms of our message of reconnection. Give ourselves a chance to go through this period, but know that there's that that moment of wonder and awe that we can enjoy.
Today we farewell Karen from our series. We thank you. And next week we're going to be inviting Father Jake Mudge to join us in our conversation as we look at re-emergence and what that might lead us to.